to the bench is not proper. That is why you have series of miscarriage of justice, because they are not grounded in the process of conducting cases. And if you are not grounded in the process of conducting cases, how can you adjudicate? But judges are lawyers.
Those people will also have some useful background knowledge, and that could be of help to them. Say, for instance, you've been a lawyer to a company, you should be able to sit, pretty well in some company cases, shouldn't you?
Well,
or business cases.
Well, you are not completely wrong, because there are several areas of the law, and ordinarily judges should have had experience in almost all the areas of the laws. But there is what is called procedural law. Procedural law is law in action. Is the vehicle that gives meaning to substantive law. Those who have worked in companies and other business endeavors are conversant with substantive law which they studied in the university. Of course, they went to the law school too and learned procedural law. But one thing about procedural law is that you have to put it in action.
Substantive.
Pardon?
You also do
substantive law is what you study in the university. Procedural law is what you study in the law school.
So,
but procedural law, you have to put it in practice. You have to be doing it, for several times.
I'm trying to break this down.
Acquainted completely with it.
Sorry, Mr. Faro, to come in there. I'm trying to break this down again because, when we talk about the ordinary man or the ordinary Nigerian, you just brought a very, very critical point. You say, if they don't get justice, they will seek self-help, which is very dangerous for every nation and any nation. And the CJN has actually said that, well, if the confidence is going and the trust is almost not there anymore, then we are in a very dire situation. But the problem now is, how do we bring back that confidence and trust? Because we've seen people tell some other persons, is it not the courts? We'll meet in courts. I'll see how far you can go. And they're like, okay, I think I don't want to go through all of that, because they believe that the man with the biggest or the fattest of purse wins the case.
Yes, it is important that confidence is restored back in the judiciary, because the alternative is anarchy, and it will draw us back to the state of nature, where life is short, brutish, solitary, nasty, and poor. So, in order to restore confidence in the judiciary, such refresher courses that are being conducted should be regular. And not only that, I've also mentioned the procedure for requirements for appointment of judges. It should be reviewed. And not only that, the bad eggs in the judiciary should be dealt with constantly. They should always be weeded out as quickly as possible, so that they will not pollute the system completely.
When she was talking about having judgments written in short, simple language, so much so that it's very clear what the judgment is addressing, what came to my mind is she trying to start a revolution of sorts? Maybe that's not the way judges usually write. Maybe it's a style of writing to be, long, winding, maybe a little ambiguous, so that maybe only learned people, like lawyers, can understand what exactly the judge has said. Is that how it used to be, or is that not more characteristic of a judgment?
Well, ordinarily, there is no particular style as to how a judgment should be written. A judgment is like a simple prose, which everybody should be able to understand. The litigant, the press, the man on the street must be able to understand the judgment. And even in England, Latin is no longer, used. So I wonder why we should continue to use Latin here. Judgment law should be made simple for people to understand. So what
you're saying is that it's not exactly simple now.
Let me not lose sight of this point. Judgment should have certain features which I have mentioned. They should be simple, but there is no particular style. You must not fail to take cognizance of the material facts brought before you as a judge. You have to evaluate the evidence adduced and led by the parties before you. Then you have to put it, by evaluating the evidence, you put it on an imaginary scale. You put it on the marginal scale, and the one that weighs more, not in quantity but in quality, will not inform your findings. Your judgment will show your findings and the decision. So there is no particular style.
I want you to comment.
Judgment should be written, but all those features should be contained in the judgment, and judgment should be simple.
And this is something that is not, it's not necessary, Sulaiman. Yeah. This is something that is not, this is something that you learn. This is something that every judge should know, right? This is not something that is new.
Well, I am aware that as part of the curriculum for the law school, the process or the what a judgment should be is part of what they teach in civil procedure, right? Then when judges are appointed, even prior to appointment of lawyers as judges, lawyers who have been in practice for many years should not find judgment difficult to write if they eventually become judges, because we read law reports which contain judgments. We write written address or written brief, which is more or less like writing judgment. And also, when judges are appointed, before they start sitting, they go through a 3-month course or so.
I was just about to ask that. Is there training for judges?
Of course there is. There is, but an ad hoc training anyway.
Anyway, comment on this. This one is from a lawyer, Ismail. He says one of the worst things to have hit the judiciary is what he calls intellectual laziness in courts of appeal and Supreme Court. And he says, well, you would hardly see a dissenting view from any judge. And this is largely because once a judge on a panel is assigned the privilege to write a judgment, the others don't go through it to dissect it properly. So everyone goes with that same judgment.
Well, I don't think it's in all cases that you see that intellectual laziness or whatever. There may exist such a phenomenon, but I don't agree that there are no longer dissenting judgments. There are dissenting judgments. If you read law reports consistently, you will find such dissenting judgments, in the appellate courts, and also this brings to the fore the need to also appoint judges from the academia, because in the past we've had cases of judges who were appointed right from the university up to the Supreme Court. And I don't see any reason why we should not continue to have that, so that you can have a balanced judgment at the end of the day. Because if you read the judgments of judges who came from the academia, of course, who also practiced too before, they came to the Supreme Court. They didn't even go to pass through the lower courts. You will see erudition in such judgments. And oftentimes, those are the people who write dissenting judgments. People who have had PhD, they were also, because lecturers are allowed to practice too. So they bring their intellectual mind as lecturers, to the bench. So, and that, buttresses or gives a fillip to the decisions of those who have been in practice all their years and who were not in the other cases. So you have a sound judgment at the end of the day in the appellate courts.
How can we make the ordinary man understand? I like the fact that you talked about Latin phrases in our judiciary, which we still very much take pride, especially lawyers, take pride in reeling out and quoting in law courts to the extent that even the man you represent does not even know what you're saying. What are you saying? Well, kill my own client. He doesn't know. But now you talked about the language as well as what comes out of the whole procedure at the end of the day. Away from the language, how can that confidence which the man believes has been hinged on money or the influence of any other person that comes before a judge, so that the man who is not influential and who is not rich can also have that same trust and confidence in the judiciary?
Well, that's part of what I've said earlier. And it also brings to mind the comments of the CJN that the rich are getting bail and the poor are getting jailed. It's unfortunate where judgment now is for the highest bidder. It's very, very unfortunate. It's a dangerous trend which should be arrested as quickly as possible. So, and I think a way to stop all these malfeasances is by wielding the big stick oftenly and ensuring that the bad eggs
who should do that?
the NJC is the constitutional